Party done. When they see me in the place, party done. When they see me in the place, when they see me in the place, party done. Party done. Party done.
Chinese on the flag high, 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 high. Chinese on the flag high, we letting go the best.
Here now, all you get dead when all you hear this, right? So I had to I did not realize that I was logged into the wrong profile. So happy new year. Happy new year. You know what? I could wait a minute. Oh my word. So I now realize that I have some messages coming in from Tech Guy, right? And he kept asking, "Are you online? Are you online? Where are you? Are you online?" And I'm like, "Yeah, kill me dead. I doing a live. So I'm gonna have to start all over because half all it wasn't even there." Ole and Ole white? I need to know if Ole and Ole white. How my volume going? I see one person saying that my volume is on the low side. So just let me know if my volume is if my volume is good, please. Tisha, I couldn't even tell if I had viewership, and I should have realized then that something was wrong, because the minute I log into this on this profile, all of the comments and all of the persons and everything, that all shows up. So when I wasn't seeing, I was like, okay, what is going on there? But I couldn't check. In any case, all right. So we had a tech glitch, right? And it's all right. It's good. It just means that Tech Guy probably going to Lego real buff in my backside, because I should have checked to see what I was logged into. So I wasn't logged into NewSource. I was logged into my personal profile. I'm not even sure why, but say what. So it goes. Hi, Stefan, out of Sydney. Happy New Year, Stefan. Happy New Year, Maria Conliffe. Happy New Year, Anne McCarthy, Fabian, Belladonna, Jennifer Nathan, who killing me with all she beach pics. Euclid, Sandra Watson. Hi, Paulina Aming. Yes, all the best for the new year to you as well. Hi, Lazili. Hi, Rosanna. Hi, Fiona. Hi, Prince. Right, good. So all day and all in white. I in my white too. So now I'm gonna have to start all the way back over, which is not necessarily a bad thing. Let's see who else is here. Leslie, Joyo, Jason Dottin, Carla McIntyre, Janelle Smith, Carleen. Hi, Sheldon. Happy New Year. Kathy Hezekiah, Patrice Cox, Neves. Happy New Year to everybody, and thank you so much for joining me. All right, let me see. Let's see. Where and how am I starting? Just now. Let me check our next message. Okay, volume is fine. Volume is perfect. Good. Thanks for the heads up, Cindy, because your comment was one of the comments that I eventually saw. What y'all think about my mug? What I like in my mug? I'm thinking that I'm going to be doing mugs so that everybody can have mugs. How do you feel about these mugs? Hi, Anushka. Yes, I was on the beach, Kathy. I've been on the beach a lot. I've been trying to catch myself. Jennifer's issue white jersey, a bit brown, yes? Okay, so let's start from the top. We are officially in 2022. It's January 1st, 2022. Hi, Bharat, Arya, Saria. I'm glad that you have arrived. But there are a number of things that happened in 2021 that will spill over into 2022. Hi, Naveed. Lovely to see you. Happy New Year. And I wanted to, this is not going to be a typical, the countdown of 2021 and the countdown of the stories. I'm not doing a countdown. I want to look at things that happened in 2021 that are going to be directly impacting on us in 2022, in this year. So the first thing we're going to be talking about, Anushka say yes, we want mugs, yes. So the first thing we're going to be talking about is this, right? That's the first thing. As of midnight tonight. And as of midnight tonight, of course, is a reference to the press conferences that we used to be paying attention to. Hi, Laverne. Blessings to you as well. So good evening. So 2020 and 2021, the Ministry of Health press conferences were a big deal, a huge deal. We would all, in the early stages, we would all be sitting down and paying attention to the press conferences. They'd have, views would be up in the 30 and 40,000 views at a time, listening to what the health professionals had to say. One of the first things that would have occurred in one of those press conferences was Anna Ramdas losing the keys to her head and asking Dr. Trotman what were her credentials. And the entire country took a gasp, huge gasp when that took place. Why? Because we understood that these persons are persons that would have spent a number of years of their life getting educated and practicing their, in their area of specialty. So how dare this jumped up reporter come and start questioning a healthcare professional? Most of 2020, I would say the majority of us had deep and abiding respect for our healthcare professionals. But as 2020 seeped into 2021, what we started to see at the press conferences more and more and more was an increase in disrespectful behavior from the media. So we went from Anna Ramdas's jackass question to Urvashi beginning to think that she understood math, statistics, epidemiology, and virology better than all of the experts on the panel. And now we have Priya Bihari, and from time to time there are other lesser known journalists who come into these press conferences with clear agendas to insult and undermine healthcare professionals. So, I see Nigel Clement say increase in quankism. You are absolutely right. The quank factor would just be getting higher and higher and higher. So 2020 into 2021, we saw increased disrespect for our healthcare professionals. And I'm putting it to you all that is going to continue in 2022. And it's going to continue up until the government has arrived at some position with respect to the vaccine mandates. Why? I mean, we've talked about this here. We've talked about the role, we've talked about the way in which media has been consistently trying to undermine the initiatives of the Ministry of Health. Why? Because they themselves want a situation where the population is as underinformed as possible and as unstable as possible. Again, why? Because media here has been functioning as a form of opposition to the sitting government. And if you're functioning as a form of opposition to the sitting government, you don't want the population to have confidence in the sitting government. That's not what you want at all. As a matter of fact, you want a situation where the population is consistently questioning and challenging and doubting professionals. Now, I want you to understand something. It takes a certain amount of confidence or stupidity to decide that you are going to look at people who are way more versed, qualified, studied, knowledgeable than you are in a particular area and watch them and say, no, I don't believe you. I don't trust you. You don't know what it is you're talking about. And that's what we have media doing on a regular basis to our healthcare professionals. And when they do it, they are doing it and pretending that they're doing it for the good of the population. But all that they're actually doing is causing greater misinformation. And greater misinformation is, of course, leading to undermining people's trust of basic things like the protocols that have been put in place: mask wearing, distancing, washing your hands. We've had people denying that there is COVID. We've had people denying that people are dying of COVID. Can you believe that? When we're in a position where we're up to what? Almost 2,800 persons, maybe over 2,800 persons by now, that would have died. So we're in a situation where, as a population, we have seen growing numbers, escalating numbers, and instead of media doing its job to assist with educating the population and making the population feel far more confident about the information that is circulating, what they continue to do is undermine. And that is scary. It also means that in having weakened the position of our medical healthcare professionals in this way, we've demoralized our healthcare professionals. And I don't think that we've paused as a population to think about the fact that these people have been working every day for the last 2 years. They've not been in a position to take a vacation. They can't take vacation. Right? They cannot take vacation. Think about that. 2 steady years, 2 solid years of working, cannot take a vacation, and you are under constant attack on a daily basis. Think about having invested money in your education, gone on to do a master's, gone on to specialize in certain areas, and after you have gone on and specialized in particular areas, you have people who barely finish secondary school in some instances, barely have a degree in other instances, coming to you to challenge your knowledge in your area of expertise. Our healthcare professionals, the team that has been leading us through this pandemic, they have to be exhausted by now. They also have to be in a position where they're questioning whether or not this is something they want to continue doing. So in 2022, as you know, January merges into February, goes into March, what you're going to see is a hard push in January, into February, into March, where media and opposition are going to try their very best to continue to undermine the policies, the healthcare policies here, certainly the fight against COVID. And then eventually they're going to have to ease back. For one reason or another, they're going to have to ease back. What is likely to get them to ease back is if the public takes a ton in their ass. And so I'm hoping that you guys will push back and push back significantly at the foolishness that media is likely to try to shove down our throat. But healthcare, this whole fight against the COVID-19 virus, that is one thing from 2021 that has leaked over into 2022. And this particular campaign of misinformation from the opposition and from the media, that is going to continue. But we also have to start taking a look at what we are doing as individuals. We have to start looking at individual responsibility. Because I'm sure you're seeing a number of the stories that are circulating about who partying and who not partying, and the kinds of actions and activities that people are engaging in, showing up at sales in very crowded spaces. So individual responsibility, I feel, has to become part of the conversation, and it has to become part of the conversation sooner rather than later. If only because those numbers that we're seeing, that almost 2,800 persons, them is not joke numbers. In the last couple months of 2021, let's say certainly from October 2021 to now, where I work, I've been seeing obituaries on a daily basis. On a weekly basis, not on a daily basis. So on a weekly basis, there's at least one member of staff that has died. The obituaries don't say what the person has passed away from, but when you see that some of these people are pretty young and are active members of staff, you stop and you think to yourself, okay, maybe some of these persons that have passed as a result of the virus, as a result of the pandemic. And I don't know how many of you have been touched by this, but you can't be seeing numbers like 25 persons today, 32 persons today, 20 persons today, and be unaffected by that. When I taught at the secondary level, my classes they range between 25 to 30 students in a class. So you walk into a classroom and you could have anywhere between 25 to 30 students in a classroom. When I see the press releases on a daily basis saying 25 persons have died, 26 persons have died, 30 persons have died, 32 persons have died, what you're really telling me is an entire classroom just disappeared in one day. In one day, an entire classroom has died. So over 5 to 7 days, an entire cohort of students for a secondary school, right? 100 and something persons, 125, 130 persons have just died. And when you turn around and you realize 2,800 persons have died, that is easily 2 towns or 2 villages of persons that have just gone. I would have somebody on the live who cussing, or they ignore that. Or they not take on Prem. What is going on with Prem right now is Prem probably did not get any harm for Christmas. Prem probably went looking for his wife and realized that the wife finds somebody else, and Prem a little bitter. So, love Prem. So when you're looking at these numbers, try and contextualize the numbers. Try and think about a room with 25 persons. Try to think about a room with 30 persons. Try to think about a room with whatever number. And then imagine the room going from full to empty. So when you're seeing things like 700 persons have died in a month, that's a whole school population. A whole school population. So think of a school building full of people and then boom, nobody. Or think about your office. How many employees do you have at your office? Let's say you have a small office situation with 20 persons in the entire office or 30 persons in the entire office. When you see a press release saying 30 persons have died for the day, that's an entire office that has died. If you're going to the bank and you notice that a bank on the ground floor where they're dealing up with customer service is 17 or 20 persons that dealing up with customer service on the ground floor of a bank, and you see a press release that then says 17 or 20 persons have died for the day, that's the whole customer service section in the ground floor of a building that has gone. When you walk into KFC, right? Any KFC branch that you have gone into, they have the staff at the front, and then you have the staff at the back, who serving people, who doing the frying, who doing the deliveries. And a shift might be 30 to 40 persons. When you get a press release that has said to you 30 persons or 35 persons died as a result of the COVID-19 virus today, that's a whole shift at KFC, right? A whole shift at KFC that would have died. So I don't know if these numbers hitting only the same way these numbers hitting me, right? These numbers hitting me in a kind of way. And we have our healthcare professionals bawling out their guts on television on a week, at least 3 times for the week, saying This is what is going on. This is what you need to do. We have the vaccines available. So it can't be a situation where it's so difficult for us to listen to what it is they have to say and get ourselves protected. I want to share 2 bits of stories with you all. Because one of the things that had upset me a couple weeks ago was that story from Anna Ramdas, where they had the 4 persons in a study. And I tell you only this. I do my digging and I find out that 3 of the 4 persons in the study working in the Express. Right? One person is a editor. One person, actually 2 of the persons are editors. So a 60-year-old female is an editor. The 58-year-old, the 54-year-old male is another editor. The 38-year-old female is a journalist. And the other 60-year-old female is a relative of one of the persons in the study, right? So Express come with a bogus study. And in their bogus study, what they arrived at in their bogus study is that Sinopharm provides you with less protection than AstraZeneca, right? Because of, again, they're trying to make the population fearful. There are 2 persons that I know of. I didn't do a study. I'm just giving all you information that I have. There are 2 persons. One lady is in her 80s. The other lady is 92. She will be 93 in this month of January here. So this 84-year-old lady was vaccinated, double vaccinated. So first shot, second shot, Sinopharm. She got COVID as a result of one of her caregivers having gotten the virus and passing the virus on. She has recovered from COVID. And this is as a result of being vaccinated with Sinopharm. The 92-year-old lady that I am aware of, not this week here, week before, so 2 weeks ago, she would have discovered as well that she had COVID, again as a result of her caregiver, one of her caregivers having contracted the virus. And she was triple dosed, so first dose, second dose, and booster shot Sinopharm. Why am I saying this? I'm saying this so that you will understand and know the same way Express could come up with their fake ass data to try and support whatever position they have to support. There are other stories out there that will be additional data that will undermine the foolishness that they're saying. So what is very important, critically important at this stage is you give yourself as much protection against the virus as you possibly can. Whichever vaccine you could get, take the vaccine. And take the vaccine because it gives you the opportunity to fight against the virus. And I'm sure Vonnet is on the live here right now. Many of you would have followed Vonnet's story because Vonnet contracted the virus, and I believe Sinopharm is the vaccine that Vonnet had. And that's what allowed her to be able to fight infection. So when you have media basically coming out and trying to undermine a vaccine and trying to undermine the state vaccination program, we're in dangerous territory here. And they're going to continue with that in 2022. So I want you all to be mindful, and I want you all to pay attention, because is next level filth they're going to be carrying on with in 2022 as a result of wanting to undermine the vaccination program. So brace yourself, be careful. So that is as of midnight tonight. That's one of the stories, right? Let's just now, what's the next story I want to look at? Right, labor. So I want to talk about work for a little bit. Right. Work is a big issue. And work is a big issue because as a result of this pandemic, we move from everybody jumping in their vehicle when the day comes, spending 2 to 3 hours of their life in traffic to get to wherever it is they're working, again, depending on where it is you're living. And then on evenings, jumping in the vehicle again and spending 2 to 3 hours of their life trying to get from work to home. And when the pandemic hit, overnight we went from 100% employed persons being out in the workplace to essential staff, and 50% of the public sector, and all kinds of crazy things were taking place, right? And so work changed drastically. My work existence went from, in 1 week, being on a physical campus having to teach physical classes, to doing everything online, everything virtually. Just 2 days ago, I was having a conversation with a friend, and I said, I haven't used paper in 2 years. I have not printed a document or printed anything on paper in 2 years, because the minute we went fully online, everything was just happening digitally. And so how we work has changed. Where we working, for some people, that has changed. How we are defining work has changed. How we defining what is a workplace has changed. And because those things have changed, and because the pandemic has forced us, or is forcing us, to redefine how we are providing goods and services to one another, it means that employees now have to start to speak up about what they want to see happen with them in the world of work. So the Prime Minister would have announced that there is going to be a vaccine mandate, right, for the public sector. So a vaccine mandate is coming. He has as much as said this, and legislation is being drafted for this vaccine mandate. He has said this, and he has said this explicitly. The Attorney General has had at least one meeting with union stakeholders. And the thing that has me disappointed, I'm not going to say upset, I will just say disappointed, is that employees, through their unions, are in a position to take a proactive position and stance on what happens with them going forward in the world of work as a result of this pandemic, and we're not taking up that opportunity. We're not taking up that opportunity. So we have the position, we have the privilege at this point in time. We have the opportunity at this point in time to show up at the bargaining table and say to our employers, okay, not all of us want to get vaccinated, because I understand that not everybody wants to get vaccinated. I'm not even going to fight you down with whether you want to be vaccinated or not vaccinated, because it's clear that the conversation right now is not everybody wants to be vaccinated. So you're coming to tell me that not one union leader in a position to turn around and say to the government, not everybody wants to get vaccinated, so let's look at arrangements that will allow for the unvaccinated employees to work remotely while the vaccinated employees work flexibly. Nobody is coming up, nobody has proffered that idea. When they start talking about what they want, when the government starts asking unions to step up and say, what do you want? What do you want to negotiate for? They're not saying what they want to negotiate for. They are basically sitting down there and waiting for the government to tell them what they're going to put in place, and they say, no, we don't want that. So we have our unions getting on like spoiled 2-year-olds, like spoiled toddlers. They can't use their words, like they don't have a vocabulary. They can't articulate what they want. And when you turn around and you say to them, when the government turns around and says to them, this is what we're looking to put in place, they're kicking up their heels, they're throwing themselves down on the ground, they're bawling, snot running down their nose, tears running down their eyes, but they're still not saying, this is what we want or don't want. And I was like, In 2021 though, because not even in 1937 were our labor unions behaving this way. So why in 2021 we have to be putting up with union leaders who are all vaccinated, mind you, right? With union leaders who are all vaccinated but coming and pushing an anti-vaccine, anti-science, work hesitant position. Now, I could understand opposing something if it's taking away your power. I cannot understand being in a position to voice the things that you need, the things that you want, the things that you are ready to negotiate for, and not voicing those things at all. And then, in listening to Roger speak last week, it hit me. There is a particular degree of backwardness in terms of how we continue to negotiate and bargain for things. So bear with me a few minutes here as I talk about work and I talk about our position on work. If I am working 5 days a week for, let's say, $10,000, and I could negotiate with my employers to allow me to work 4 days for the week instead of 5 days for the week, or 3 days for the week instead of 5 days for the week in the physical office for the $10,000. I am allowing myself to have some more power and leeway in terms of my quality of life. Right? As a basic approach there. In speaking to private sector employers about the pandemic and how they went about dealing with work issues where the pandemic is concerned, they talked to me about using flexible approaches. So they'd have some members of staff working remotely, some members of staff working within the company. And this was at the point in time that we hadn't started yet doing all of the vaccine stuff, right? You're coming to tell me, Roger and them, as collective bargainers, can't get to the point where they're sitting down around the table and beginning to throw out ideas about how people can work and where people can work from? Even if all we're doing is cutting down on how many days for the week people have to be facing that traffic to come into Port of Spain or to get to whichever part of the country, we can't have a conversation like that yet in 2021. Because here's the thing, right? And this is something that everybody here is aware of. This is the elephant in the room that we're not addressing. 2020 and 2021 showed everybody that you don't need a full workforce to get things done. Right? We had the Prime Minister talk about the number of persons that vaccinated in various ministries. We have seen with the various lockdowns that took place that very many departments and ministries managed to keep themselves running and afloat with only 50% of the staff. Only 50% of the staff. What is that telling you? If you had a place of employment and you had 20 members of staff in that company, but as a result of this pandemic, between 8 to 10 persons is who coming out and running the office for you, and you're still getting what you need to get done with the 8 to 10 members of staff, aren't you going to start thinking to yourself, well, I could start to streamline things here and cut down on my wage bill? Wouldn't you be thinking that? Because I telling all you, our wage bill here, the government has to find $4 billion every month to pay salaries. $4 billion every month. 12 fours are 48, right? Because all you know, my maths ain't so good. My maths ain't hot. I don't turn around and pretend to be like Urvashi, where I is the best mathematician on the face of the earth. So the wage bill is $4 billion a month. And this would have been $4 billion that you're paying to people whether or not they are at the office or not at the office. Because remember, the government didn't fire anybody, right? So $4 billion a month to pay staff. Not all of the staff are out at work, but the same quantity of work getting done, right? Whether efficient or inefficient, the same quantity of work getting done. The next thing is, as a result of the pandemic and wanting to cut down on how much interaction you had, more services became digitized. And as more services became digitized, you had certain things happening more efficiently. So if you are an employer and every month you have to find $4 billion to pay staff, and of that staff, 50% of that staff was home for the majority of time for the last 2 years, and you begin to realize, wait now, I could have 50% less employees and therefore cut my wage bill by give or take 50%, and the same amount of work going to get done. You don't think an employer going to pause and start thinking to themselves, I could start to trim the fat and streamline my workforce? You don't think so? Because I sit down and I watch this from 2020 into 2021, right? I watch it. And I said to myself, if employees not paying attention to what is taking place here, they're not going to see that they're likely to become obsolete. Because more and more what you're seeing is not every single job needs to be handled by a person. There are a number of jobs that can become digitized. So I think part of the obstructive behavior is, of course, to protect jobs. But you see, I don't think that that is going to work as a strategy. And I think that instead of trying to protect jobs by obstructing a bargaining process, what unions need to do is come to the table now and start to be a part of establishing what the new protocols and the new, I guess, work arrangements are going to be, if they're really and truly interested in protecting employees and ensuring that at the end of the day, employees have something to do. Because nobody was complaining when they was home collecting a salary and not having to show up for work. Nobody was complaining. Nobody was obstructing, right? And more, what you're realizing is that digitization is going to be a threat for people's jobs. But if it's going to be a threat for people's jobs, then what you need to do is ensure that there are more persons developing certain skills that will make it possible for them to continue to function and work within the current environment. And so I feel like a huge opportunity in the last 2 years is being missed to get new skills, different skills, and skills that will actually keep you in the workplace. So I've been looking at this whole work situation, this whole labor situation, this whole vaccine mandate situation, watching it build, watching it become an issue in the public domain. And I'm saying to myself, the unions are approaching this all wrong. It cannot be obstruct for the sake of obstruction. It cannot be Roger showing up and saying he don't trust the data that the Ministry of Health is giving on a daily basis, and he wants to be assured that the vaccine going to prevent people from getting the virus. No government could assure you of that, because the vaccine does not prevent people from getting the virus. What the vaccine does is enhances and boosts your immune system so that you can better fight the virus if you contract it. So when you are saying that your bargaining position is assure us that getting vaccinated going to prevent us from getting the virus, immediately you started from a position where you're going to lose. You're immediately starting from that kind of position. And I'm not saying that people that don't want to get vaccinated must get vaccinated, or you eventually have to make all your choice. What I am saying is, if you are an employee of the state and you don't want to get vaccinated, the way in which you all are conducting your negotiations right now going to put you in a really weird position. The way you all are negotiating, you are, I think, putting yourself in a position where you're going to end up out of a job and unvaccinated. So unvaccinated and unemployed. That's how I am seeing it. I think at this point in time, if you are insistent that you're not getting vaccinated, then you need to have your union putting forward options that allows you to be able to continue to earn a living in some form or fashion. Just obstructing for the sake of obstructing, that's not going to get you anywhere. And the other thing you need to look at too is this. Private sector is looking on at the public sector. Private sector has put vaccination mandates in place for their employees. Either you get vaccinated or every 2 weeks you have to do PCR tests. How you think it's going to look where for the public sector that they are going to have unvaccinated employees in their workspace? Because what that also does is promote the public sector or position the public sector as being an unsafe environment for conducting business. And I feel as if those are things that public sector employees not thinking about. That you are actually forcing your employer to have a workspace that can be considered unsafe and unhealthy. So no, I don't think that any employer is going to sit by and take on board and accept a position of we not getting vaccinated and we are also not coming to the bargaining table with any suggestions. My advice is quick, sharp, sit down and start to come up with some options to lay out for the to lay out on the bargaining table. And Corey, I'm seeing that you're saying that they aren't out of ideas and that they are aware of progressive developments. And I'm not saying no, you know. They probably have ideas, but the position that they are taking right now of being obstructive for the sake of being obstructive, I think that technique is old, it is outdated, and they need to try something else at this point in time. They really need to try something else. So that's a work situation, and that would have been one of the stories from 2021 that I think is going to leak over into 2022. I'm sure you all know by the middle of January 2022, the government is going to have to come forward with its vaccine mandate, and they're talking about furloughing employees. So that's something to look forward to. I mean, I've made jokes from time to time online saying, you know, I dusting off my CV and I'm looking to apply to become a PS or a DPS in a ministry. I've said it as a joke, but I also think that there are persons who will be legitimately facing loss of work by the end of January into February if they decide that they aren't getting vaccinated and the unions don't have a better bargaining position. So I think people need to understand that you have to bring something to the table. You can't just show up at the table and say, no, I don't want that, I don't want that, I don't want that. What you want, love? What do you want? So that's a work situation. What's the next thing I want to go and take a look at? Let's talk about. So I want to talk about the necromongers. And who are the necromongers? These are the people for whom death is important. Perpetuating death. But I feel a little thirsty. I see Debbie Carla Davidson is saying that the new PSA head could make a difference. Gil, I hope so, yes. Honestly, for the sake of public servants, I hope so. But I'm also hearing that he's close to retirement. So, if he's close to retirement, I don't know how much he will be able to do. What am I drinking? I'm drinking sorrel. It's a festive season, so I'm having sorrel. some good sorrel though. Right, so the necromongers. Y'all big up to Tech Guy, for giving me all of these nice graphics. Certainly this graphic. I turn around and I tell Tech Guy I want to talk about the opposition and the media and how they're moving like they're moving like a zombie apocalypse. And this is what Tech Guy sends to me. Oh my goodness. Right. So the necromongers. So the necromongers are people who deal in death dealers. For all of 2021, it started in 2020, but it wasn't as bad in 2020 as it got in 2021. 2021, we would have kicked off with the unfortunate murder of that young lady. And when that happened at the end of January, thereabouts, media here went into overdrive, focused a lot on pushing a particular narrative where vaccines were concerned, pushing a particular narrative where crime was concerned, and generally giving the impression that nothing was being handled in a particular nothing was being handled in a proper manner here, and so basically everybody gonna die. Then you had Kamala, Mrs. Sunlight will kill COVID, Mrs. Punching and line, Mrs. She ain't really looking to wear masks and thing when she out in public, Mrs. I not planning to get vaccinated, although she did eventually get vaccinated. You had Kamala pushing her MPs to have death marches all over the country. And this all started up at the point in time that the government was trying to ramp up its vaccination program. Yes, correct, Miss Dome. Because by then we'd had a huge shipment of Sinopharm vaccines come in. We had the Johnson & Johnson vaccines on their way. We had the Pfizer vaccines about to land. And the government was trying to get everybody on board so that we would have hit the 70% vaccination figure. To ensure that didn't take place, Kamala and her MPs started to push a particular head with respect to vaccination. Now, while I can grasp that a political party will want to push a particular narrative to undermine a government, I cannot grasp a political party pushing a narrative to undermine its very citizens and voter base. And this is a thing that has me concerned. You pause and you think to yourself, Kamala don't want to actually be voted back into power at all? Like, seriously, 100% for real, as Queen Quenk, you have decided that you are going to jeopardize the lives of citizens in this country? And then you have this man dragging a coffin the length and breadth of the country, all over the country, putting people's face inside, pictures of people inside the coffin, all kind of nonsense. That's the story you want surrounding your party. So when I saw the other day that even Khadijah, fed up at this coffin being dragged all over the place and fed up at the coffin showing up in front of people's house, I said to myself, but when Khadijah get a conscience, boy? Because these very MPs have been promoting this whole death cult narrative all over the country. And the death cult narrative is not actually benefiting them, because their support base is a support base that has been believing they shouldn't get vaccinated. So you're thinking to yourself, you're really undermining your own support base in that way? You're really pushing and promoting this level of misinformation amongst your own support base? So expect that foolishness from 2021 is going to seep over into 2022. Why? Because they need to have a discontented voter base. If you have a voter base that is willing to trust its government enough with respect to health and health care, if you have a voter base that starts thinking about the medical team in a particular way, then they're going to be thinking about government policy in a particular way. And so that's why attacking healthcare professionals at the press conferences, that's why it's so important. Because if you undermine trust in healthcare professionals, then you're undermining trust in the government. That's how they're working these things out. And if you have this whole narrative of people being anxious and feeling panicky and feeling uncertain and feeling like they can't trust professionals and they can't trust data all the time, then that leads you to have a population whose minds you could manipulate. Because you have all of this noise, right? Persistent noise, left, right, and center. And when you have people listening to the noise and they're not sure of who to believe and what to believe, you're very right, Barry Cochran, is a situation where they will stop trusting people in positions of authority. And that is what the death dealers want. So the various forces that are functioning as opposition to the government, that's what they're pushing for. They are pushing for a particular kind of instability within the society. And the antidote to that, of course, is if you have all of this noise around you, the antidote to noise is quiet. Not silence, but quiet. So you have to find ways to be still. You have to find ways to tune out the noise. And that's why every so often you'll hear me say, I'm going on a hiatus. And I'm going on hiatus, not because I don't like sitting down and liming it all here, but because to do this show, I had to read news every day. To do this show, I had to listen to the foolishness coming out of Kamala mouth in Parliament and when she do press conferences. To do this show, I had to be keeping abreast of all of the foolishness that being said, whether it's healthy for me to be listening to or unhealthy for me to be listening to. So every so often, after a couple months pass, I had to take a break and detox, get all of this filth out of my system. And let me tell you, it has been a relief to get up on a daily basis and not feel like I have to read the papers. You know, I could choose to read a story or not read a story. It has been a relief to get up and not think, you know what, I need to listen to that UNC press conference today, or I need to listen to what it is saying in Parliament today, or I need to check the stories. Take a break. And so I want to encourage you all in 2022 to take breaks, detox, go on hiatus from time to time. You don't have to do it for as long as I just do it for. You could do it for longer, entirely up to you. Take a week off on news. Take a week off of social media, right? Just to not have to listen to all of the toxic filth that is becoming up out of either mainstream news or all of the other, you know, social media figures. And I mean, you could even decide you want to take a break from me. I wouldn't even be vexed about that. Because every once in a while, you realize, yeah, boy, I need some quiet. So take the quiet, find ways to be still and find ways to just filter out all of the nonsense. Just filter out the filth, right? Do that from time to time. It makes a world of difference. It has made a world of difference for me. And you see, in 2022, you're going to need it. Trust and believe you're going to need it. So that's what right. So that's in the necromongers and them. And I mean, when I'm talking about the necromongers, I'm talking about mainstream media, Guardian, Newsday, Express, the foolishness that is be passing as stories from them, the fake studies, the set of foolish headlines, the half-baked stories, the misinformation, the lack of fact-checking. right? Tune it out, right? Tune it out. Right. So that is boom. Olia. What's the next thing? Do I really want to get into this, boy? Yeah. Let me get into it. Oh, before I talked about that, I wanted to say in 2022, you're also going to see them try to rebrand themselves. You're going to see Kamla and even newspapers try to rebrand themselves. Newspapers here are going to try and rebrand themselves as being pro-environment. There's going to be a lot of pro-environment things because I'm already seeing Guardian and Express pushing on a whole enviro and green and sustainability thing. You're also going to see the UNC try to subtly align itself with the PDP and a couple other organizations. You're also going to see people who wasn't in politics for a little while jump back in politics, right? So look out for all of that in 2022. So there is a paranormal romance story that has been going on here for quite some time, and I want to talk about the characters in this paranormal romance story. Yes, Nigel, there's going to be a lot of Farley mania. They've already started the Farley mania because there's a lot of positive press coverage right now. But with all of the rebranding that they're going to try to do, I don't think that the rebranding is going to be as successful as they would like for the rebranding to be. But we will look on, right? I mean, as the stories develop, as the rebranding in 2022 starts, of course, we're going to meet right here and talk about the rebranding. So, yes, I think Griffith going to end up back inside the Parliament. It would not surprise me if it wouldn't surprise me if Griffith returns as a senator for the United National Congress. And yes, I saw that Farley is the Newsday Person of the Year, and I think he was the Express Person of the Year as well. And apparently, winning an election makes you a Person of the Year, which then means that anytime a politician here wins an election, the person should be the Person of the Year. So was Dr. Rowley the Person of the Year in 2020 after having won the election? Listen, we need to stop the foolishness. Anyhow, so I want to talk about a paranormal romance. And this paranormal romance is, of course, linked to one of the big stories that would have happened here on News Source. Because here would have been the first time that we talked about Griffith as Commissioner of Police, the Police Service Commission, Farris and Paragraph 4, and why all of those things were an unholy alliance that would have allowed for a certain kind of foolishness to take place. Because there was interference, there was a whole bunch of things happening with our legislation that ought not to have happened with our legislation. And so I want to get into this particular romance. For a while, we would have had Gary and Farris functioning as a sort of dynamic duo, right? One person representing law enforcement and the other person representing legislation. So you have Farris creating laws and you have Gary allegedly enforcing laws. And the two of them, for the majority of the pandemic, there would have been things happening that would have pointed to an uneven application and an uneven enforcement of laws. So things like public versus private spaces, things like locking up people who were partying when they should not have been partying during the state of emergency, during the lockdowns. Things like who's supposed to be on a vessel and not supposed to be on a vessel. Now, it was always clear to me that Faris and Griffith had they had a very good relationship. They have a very close relationship. When Legal Notice 183 took place with the infamous paragraph 4, that upset me, and it upset me significantly, because I feel like you should never be in a situation where you can change, tweak, or amend laws to help people, or change, tweak, and amend laws with loopholes that allow people to be able to do things that they ought not to be able to do. So I was particularly adamant about addressing and dealing with the issue of paragraph 4 in Legal Notice 183, because I felt it was a real abuse of the Constitution that we'd put an amendment in place, and that the amendment assisted only one person. So that was that particular romance, right? That particular paranormal romance. And everybody knows what went on with the Police Service Commission, that Griffith eventually lost his job, that there was a whole fiasco about how the selection took place or didn't take place. The legislation was eventually deemed unconstitutional. Griffith would have been sent on leave, and thereafter he was not able to ever regain the job. And he has been dealing up with Tabanka for this work for the last however many months. Good. So that was that. Now I think everybody remembers this particular story, right? So Chandler would have been at sea on a vessel, and again, we here, New Source family, the mark bus on New Source first, because I would have heard that Coast Guard and Riverine Police stopped this vessel, or boarded this vessel, asked questions. There was a standoff at sea, and who pulled gun and who ain't pulled gun, etc., etc., etc. And when Chandler was held and had to answer questions in the police station, somehow the Attorney General seemed to have become part of the giving of advice with respect to this case. And when the Attorney General gave advice, what he said was that Chandler hadn't done anything illegal. There was no breach of the public health ordinance. And I thought that was odd, that for a number of reasons. One, because the public health ordinance makes it very clear that party boat and people on boat and people having party and thing on boat, that is not supposed to happen. The other thing too is, why was the Attorney General the first person to jump in to give a legal opinion in this particular matter, right? So when that had happened, I'd raised questions about it. I talked about it, and I said that the Attorney General too often seemed to be stepping out of his crease. You are there to provide advice to the cabinet. You are not there to be jumping out and providing advice on every single police investigation that is taking place. You have different arms of the state for that. You have the Solicitor General's office, you have the office of the DPP, you have the office of the state solicitor, I believe. So why was it always the situation where the Attorney General just always jumping into particular situations and getting involved in particular situations? So there was that combination, right? The Faris and Gary combination. And that Faris and Gary combination eventually came to an end. And I understand the role and part that I played in that. Now we have a new situation. We have a new boat ride situation. So let me get into this boat ride situation and let us explore precisely what has taken place in the last week. And the reason I raised the issue of Griffith and then of Chandler was because I wanted to position your minds to understand the importance of somebody who has the opportunity to make laws and the kind of power you have when you can make laws and you know what the laws say and you know where the loopholes are and you know how people could benefit from the law, right? And I also raised the issue of the Chandler thing because, again, it was there's a lot of similarities in the Chandler issue and then this particular issue that come up here now in this last week about this party that took place on December the 26th. So let me get into it. Give me a second, let me pull up some pictures. Right. Good. Where are we at? Right. So let me go back to November. This image that you see in here, blow it up. YUP Life, right? So Yup Life on the 29th of November put out this image here on their Facebook page. Who else needs one boat ride and they will be okay? Experience Yup Life Carnival, we miss you. So early on in November, according to the story, the owners of the MV Ocean Pelican, would have put in an application for a restaurant and liquor license. Now, all you know me, as a woman, does like to look at legislation and thing, right? So let me look at a little piece of legislation first before we jump into this thing. This is the Liquor License Act. This is section 12 of the Liquor License Act. So it says here, a license shall only authorize the person to whom it is granted to carry on the licensed trade in one set of premises to be specified in the license, and the whole of the premises must be adjoining and held together for the same trade. However, no license shall be deemed to extend to any part of such premises not described in the form of entry required by section 76. Let me say that again. Let me read it again for you. A license, this is the Liquor License Act of Trinidad and Tobago, right? A license shall only authorize the person to whom it is granted to carry on the trade in one set of premises to be specified in the license. Now, Olia, help me to help myself. December the 26th, police hold 150 people, allegedly, right? Or about 150 people. I have since seen different figures. I see people put up posts to say it was less than 100 people and all that. Police hold about 100 to 150 people off a vessel that was anchored off Anchorage area there in Chaguaramas for partying. And you have the owner of the vessel, who is also known as a party promoter here, saying that he have a license to operate the boat as a restaurant. Now, when you go and you start to look at documents, you are seeing that a restaurant, that a place purporting, an address purporting to have a restaurant or to be a restaurant is around number 25 Queen's Park, Savannah. Let me go back to the legislation again for you to understand something. A license shall only authorize the person to whom it is granted to carry on the license trade in one set of premises to be specified in the license. One set of premises. So if you are saying that your restaurant is at 25 Queen's Park West, that is where the boat's supposed to be. At 25 Queen's Park West. The restaurant can be at 25 Queen's Park West, and then you move the restaurant down to the anchorage in Chaguaramas. That is not how it works. So from the time I see this story on the Saturday evening, Saturday night, about people in a party on a boat and whatever it is, I say to myself, okay, that had to be a boat ride. It had to be a party. It had to be a party boat. So Boxing Day was Christmas Day was the Saturday. So Boxing Day was the Sunday. Sunday evening, I get some images of this party. And after I get the images of the party on Sunday evening, my sources and them in the police service message me and tell me, girl, real people get detained down in the Chaguaramas, down in the party in Chaguaramas, and they're at the Carenage police station right now. And then they said to me, you wouldn't believe what is taking place. The person who owned the vessel here with the police and basically telling the police, all they can arrest me. I ain't commit no crime. I get advice from a senior legal officer in the country, and then proceeded to call the senior legal person. I think by now everybody knows who I'm referring to. So a police officer tells me that the promoter is there, the person who owned the vessel is there, saying that they can't be charged with anything because they may do nothing illegal. And then they proceed to call the Attorney General. So I pause and I say to myself, if I am in trouble and I get held by the police, it would never occur to me to just pull out my phone and call the Attorney General. And it's not like I don't have his number. I do. You all are aware of this. I have Gary's number as well. It would never occur to me, if I get locked up or charged for something, to call the former commissioner of police. I have other police officers' numbers on my phone. So if I being held or detained or arrested for having, possibly breached law, it would not occur to me to tell the police, or they can't arrest me, or they can't detain me, I know so and so, and then call the person. So I stop and I say, okay, this kind of odd. So then the story starts to unfold. And when the story starts to unfold now, you're hearing a whole bunch of different things cropping up. But let me start with the first letter, right? So let me look at the first letter. So December the 26th, this letter reached out in the public domain. Or rather, I should say, on December the 27th, a letter that is purported to have been written on December the 26th comes out. And this is a letter from Adrian Schoon to the Minister of Health, right? And he says, we at Ocean Pelican are writing to inform you that we have attained our restaurant and bar license and wish to convert our vessel into a floating restaurant and, more importantly, as a safe zone. Now, here the thing that make me stop here. Paying for a restaurant and bar license does not make you a restaurant and bar. There's a whole list of process and approvals you have to get. You have to get approval from a magistrate. You have to get approval from whichever regional corporation the address that you are in falls under. So let us say in this case here is number 25 Queen's Park West. Port of Spain City Corporation had to get involved. the fire services had to get involved. The county medical officer have to get involved because there are a series of approvals and documents that you have to get to be able to officially be operating a restaurant and bar. None of those things have happened here. What you have is a person writing to the Minister of Health saying, we have attained our restaurant and bar license. And I get into the restaurant and bar license just now. I'm going to get it just now. So a whole series, right? It must be 10 steps this person's supposed to go through to make sure that they are legitimately operating a restaurant and bar. Health, safety, town and country and regional corporation or city corporation, a number of things that they have to go through. None of those things, mind you, the act, right, the Liquor License Act and laying out all of those things for you. Mind you, none of those things, just you write in to say that we have attained our restaurant and bar license and wish to convert our vessel into a floating restaurant. You don't just decide that you're going to convert your restaurant, your vessel into a floating restaurant. You can't, that's not, you don't just wake up one morning and decide that that's the case. Your vessel don't just change identity just like that. It can't be a situation where your boat get up one morning and decide it want to be a car. A boat cannot get up and decide to be a car. The same way a boat cannot get up and decide to be a restaurant. That's like me getting up and deciding I is a pirogue. No, that is not how it works at all. So these slackers, right? These grifters decide that them going to tell the Minister of Health that the boat, the vessel that we have functioning as a party boat all these years, well, it got up this morning and it changed its identity, right? So the vessel have all kind of trans issues that it's dealing up with right now. All I remember El Pecos. One day El Pecos was a restaurant and the next day El Pecos became a convenience store. All I remember that. All I remember all the identity issues that El Pecos had. It became a trans vendor. Well, that's the same thing that went on here. Adrian Schoon decide he having a boat ride party, right? He decided he holding an event on his boat December the 26th. And the event that he was holding on the boat December the 26th would have required, if he going to be a safe zone, party boats are not allowed under the public health ordinance, right? They're not allowed under the public health ordinance. What allowed under the public health ordinance to function as safe zones will be bars and will be restaurants. He didn't have a bar license. He went and he got a restaurant license, I believe, from customs, and we're going to get into that. And then he writes to the Minister of Health the same day that the event taking place, according to this letter, right? So the event taking place on the 26th of December, Mr. Adrian decides on the 26th of December, and for all we know, he must write this while he was in the police station. Right, the same evening he was in the police station, he must write it then and there to say, we at Ocean Pelican are writing to inform you that we have attained our restaurant and bar license and wish to convert our vessel into a floating restaurant. On advice from the Honorable A.G. Faris it should be Al-Rawi, not Al-Wari. We ensure you that our vessel will remain docked and will not sail so as to adhere to the public health ordinance regulations. And this is the next point for me that is just bare assness. I have people telling me left, right, and center that the boat didn't leave the dock. The boat remained moored. And so because the boat remained moored, that means it's not a party boat. Olia, stop pissing in my face and calling it rain. Not because a boat sailing, a boat sailing is not what makes it a party boat or not a party boat. The boat could move from its moorings and go and drop anchor in the middle of the ocean. Once it is playing music and people are engaging in dancing and listening to music on the boat, it is a party boat. If you have paid money to go onto a vessel for entertainment and the vessel is not a restaurant, it is a party boat. And the thing about it is, the vessel is still registered under the Ministry of Works and Transport as a party boat, right? It is still on record as a party boat. But you write a whole letter to say, we get a license, we decide that we converting to be a floating restaurant, right? And we want to be a safe zone, and the vessel not going to move from the dock. It's not sailing, so it's not a party boat. Adrian Schoon, a businessman, writing to the Minister of Health to basically tell the Minister of Health. He's not asking, he's not seeking permission, he's not going through the proper channels. You write a letter on the day of the event to tell the minister that you have decided that you are not a party boat, You have decided that you are now a restaurant. You want to become a safe zone. And in your opinion, once the vessel move from where it moored, it means that you are not a party boat. Listen, none of this made any sense to me. But that's only the first letter, right? There's only the first letter. There are a whole bunch of other letters. So let's get into the other letters. So this letter surfaced shortly after the story from the story in the Express from Denise Wren. And after that story was done, this letter came out into the public domain. When I say came out, this letter was published. So the Attorney General sends out a letter on the 28th of December. So Denise Wren's story. Okay, the boat ride happened on the 26th. The Express story come out on the 27th. And on the 28th, the Attorney General puts out this press release, basically saying that the things that are in the story are untrue, that at no point in time did he give any advice, right? And this for me was the clincher here. The AG gave no legal advice to Schoon whatsoever. The AG never saw nor did he authorize the letter referred to in the article. So up until this point in time, the letter wasn't out in the public domain. It would have been the Express story quoting from the letter, and then there would have been the Attorney General's response. Then the letter came out into the public domain. The letter reached me. I post up the letter, right? I took a look at the letter and I said to myself, well, you had to be real brave. You write the Minister of Health and you tell the Minister of Health that the AG advised you whatever. Why would you do something like that? So I'm like, so Adrian Schoon will just brazen to write to the Minister of Health in that way and to say that the Attorney General advised him? Because this would be a clear case of somebody being able to say to, no, this is not the case. He didn't this, he didn't that, I never, blah, 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 blah. So I look on and I say, okay, all right, this thing, it have legs, it have ways to go. Then, on the same 28th of December, the next letter comes out into the public domain. The Minister of Health then puts out his own letter to Adrian Schoon. Now, by this point in time, I start to think to myself, there's a whole clown should have taken place here. A man has a party on a boat on Boxing Day. A man writes to you on Boxing Day. All you need to bear something in mind. The public sector was shut down on December 24th. Remember that. The Prime Minister shut down the public sector from the 24th of December to the 3rd of January, if I'm not mistaken. And this would have been part of his initiative for getting staff, public sector staff, ready for the whole vaccination mandate rollout. So the public sector closed from 24th of December to January 3rd. So if the public sector closed from December 24th to January 3rd, who Adrian Schoon sent his letter to? Everybody home. So who the letter gets sent to? Because all you know public sector the same way I know public sector, right? If you're seeking permission from people and you're sending letters and things to people, and this letter have to get to the minister, surely it must be passing through channels. So if this letter was sent on the 26th of December to the Minister of Health, I have to assume that is some essential member of the Ministry of Health that this letter passed through. Either that or the letter was sent directly to the Minister of Health. So let us, for the sake of argument, say that the letter was sent directly to the Minister of Health. A letter like this is sent directly to the Minister of Health, and nobody paused at all to say, well, how this vessel registered as a restaurant, or when did this vessel become a restaurant, or how has this vessel become a floating restaurant? Because I don't know about any floating restaurant. So you have December 26th being a Sunday and a public holiday. Letter sent off. I want to assume it was emailed. The letter reaches to the office of the Minister of Health. And the subject there, big and bold: use of Ocean Pelican vessel as floating restaurant in accordance with safety zone guidelines. Now, I think everybody here knows this. You don't have to apply to become a safety zone. Once you are an established bar, restaurant, cinema, once you are that, you just download the guidelines and you laminate the guidelines and you ensure that the public knows that you are a safe zone area, that these are the guidelines that have to be followed, and you implement the guidelines, because the police and they will come around to ensure that you implement the guidelines. Was this vessel a restaurant? That's the first question that needed to be asked. And unfortunately, that question seemed to not be asked by anybody at all. So the story started to get even murkier, because Kyle Taklal Singh, who is the attorney for Adrian Schoon, then issued a statement, and this was part of the statement that was issued: a special liquor license. Now I want all to see that there's a special liquor license, right? Not a restaurant license. A special, well, no, it's a special restaurant license on it, sorry. All right. So Adrian Schoon of 25 Queen's Park West gets issued a special license, right? And the sum of $3,375 would have been paid. I need to find the other document. Let me find the other document for you. This is the one, boy? Right, this is the one. Check this out. So this is the official receipt for the special restaurant license, right? and it would have been issued and is right of the keeper of a restaurant known as the MV Ocean Pelican, premises situated at number 25 Queens Park West. $3,375 would have been paid, and the person that signs it is somebody called L. Lalu. So that is the receipt. Let me go to the next document. Where the next document? Oh my goodness. Please tell me that I have that here. Oh my goodness. Just now, I had to go and pull it up. I had to go and pull it up from somewhere else. Because I would have put it on the, I'd have put it on, let me go and pull it off at Twitter. Because I know I put it up on Facebook. But if I go on Facebook now, it might cause some static. So let me go and pull up. Wait. All right. This is a release from the Ministry of Finance. Right. So, December 3rd. December 3rd, 2021. From the Permanent Secretary of the Ministry of Finance to the Comptroller of Customs and Excise, right? So, attention, Ms. Vidya Marcial. Request for a special license issued to Mr. Adrian Schoon, right? So, your memorandum dated October the 25th, 2021 on the above mentioned subject refers. The Minister of Finance is giving consideration to the request for the sale of intoxicating liquor to the undermentioned applicant. Accordingly, the approval has been deferred until the legislative changes to facilitate the request has been made. I want to go through this document properly. So, on the 3rd of December, the Permanent Secretary from the Ministry of Finance wrote to the Comptroller of Customs and Excise. And the Comptroller of Customs and Excise would have sent correspondence to the PermSec of the Ministry of Finance since the 25th of October. I want you all to pay attention to the dates because the dates are important here. So since the 25th of October, a query would have been sent to the PS in the Ministry of Finance, basically asking for permission to be given for a special license for Adrian Schoon. And the Minister of Finance asked one question, and it's there in section 2. The question is this permissible under current COVID-19 public health restrictions? That is the question that was asked. Right? So the Ministry of Finance asks, is this permissible under current COVID-19 public health restrictions? This is since the 25th of October, right? That's what I want you all to pay attention to. Since the 25th of October, this was an issue. It reached the Ministry of Finance. The Minister of Finance asked if this is permissible under current COVID-19 health restrictions. And then the conclusion that they arrived at is approval has to be deferred until the legislation change. That's December 3rd. This event took place on December 26th, and on December 23rd, somebody inside Customs and Excise allowed Adrian Schoon to pay for a license. Who made that decision? Why did L. Lalu, if this inside Customs since the 3rd of December, how come from the 3rd of December all the way down to the 23rd of December, all that time passed, and on the 23rd of December, the last working day for the majority of the public service. Remember, the public service gone home from the 24th of December to the 3rd of January. So all you wait until the last working day for the public sector and allow this person to pay for a special restaurant license? Why? Who allow that? Who is this person that signed on behalf of the Comptroller of Customs? Because again, the 25th of October, this was something that was the Comptroller of Customs drew the issue to the attention of the PERMSEC. The PERMSEC gets back to the Comptroller of Customs with a final answer on the 3rd of December. And then 20 days later, the last working day for the public service, you allow the person to pay for a license, even though there are already instructions inside Customs and Excise saying you're not supposed to give this person a license. That is the level of foolishness that's taking place. So that happens. The person pays for the license, automatically thinks because they've paid for and received this slip of paper, it means that they could function as a restaurant. Even though you're supposed to go through a whole series of things to be able to function as a restaurant. So they feel once they have that piece of paper saying, I paid for the license, then it means that the police can't do them anything, because I pay for the license and I have this receipt from Customs and Excise, and so that means that you have to not charge me for functioning as a party boat because I went and paid for a license. That's the kind of foolishness that's taking place here. And it raises all kinds of questions. It raises questions about the integrity of customs. It raises questions about the integrity of the various bits of legislation that we have passed here. Because a party boat is a party boat is a party boat. Everybody knows that we're not supposed to be operating party boat and pleasure cruise at this point in time. And yet somebody decides that they're going to throw a party, and they're going to throw a party for 100 or 100 plus persons during a pandemic where people dying. So you have decided as a business person that even though parties and gatherings and functions could lead to infection, and infection could lead to death, the most important thing for you at this point in time is to throw this event and make money. So money over lives, right? Your livelihood over people's lives. But what also occurred to me is the person who allowed that money to be paid for the license, that public servant, you think that public servant stop at any point in time and say to themselves, but you know, if I allow this to happen, I could be endangering the lives of persons on that vessel? So here you have officials within the Ministry of Health. Here we have our Ministry of Health team that is be showing up on these press conferences 3 times for the week, basically telling us all the time, observe the guidelines, observe the rules, wear your mask, wash your hands, keep your distance, don't end up in situations where it could be increasing spread. And many of us opting to follow all of these guidelines, opting to follow all of these rules. And here you have somebody for whom making that extra dollar so important, they must throw the event. And somebody else from the public service arranging things so that the person could actually do something that is illegal. You all understand the level of foolishness that went down here? You all realize that there's a situation where a member of the public service, several other members who involved in legislation and passing legislation, and somebody from the business community all seem to have at some point in time interacted and possibly conspired with each other to breach the public health regulations. You all seeing that? Because it's like a whole intricate, messy web of corruption that unraveled in front of our eyes this week. So from Sunday to now, every single day, a new piece of information came into the public domain. And every single time a new piece of information came into the public domain, you understood how much more complex and rotten this entire situation was. And in the midst of all of that, you need to remember, we in a pandemic, allowing this person to think that they could have held that boat ride, allowing people to think that their boat could automatically wake up one morning and change its identity and become a floating restaurant. We could be endangering lives, which brings me right back to what we would have been discussing at the very start. We talked about this team of people. We talked about how hard they have been working. We talked about all of the things that they've been doing to try to keep us safe, because this team is the only team we have to help us through the pandemic. The year would have started with this team working and continuing to work very hard. And then the year ended with that story about the boat ride. And what that story about the boat ride showed us was precisely what takes place here that allows for COVID numbers to spike. So we started off talking about the COVID team that fighting to protect us. And we talked about the COVID team that fighting to protect us. And we talked about the numbers. And we talked about what 20 persons and 25 persons and 30 persons mean. And then you come at the end of the year and you understand why we see in 20 and 25 and 30 and 35 persons a day dying. Because lots of different people feel that the rules don't apply to them. Or lots of different people feel that the loopholes in the law, that's where they're meant to exist. Lots of different people feel that rules and laws is for some people, but not for me. Maybe based on who my friends are, maybe based on who my family members are. But what we saw this week was that it was very possible for the very persons who's supposed to be enforcing, upholding, creating, and encouraging us to keep the laws. We see that all of this was for nothing, because somebody decided them had to make a money and they had to eat a food on December the 26th. And that's what got me very worried and very angry this week. That we could have plenty people here who go in, getting the vaccine, wearing the mask, keeping the distance and behaving themselves. And just a handful of people could decide that the rules don't apply to them. And because that handful of persons decide the rules don't apply to me, the rest of us could end up being endangered and having our lives be put at risk with this infectious disease, this infectious virus that we're all dealing up with. And that got me very annoyed. And it's going to continue, because that kind of corruption, that'll stop just so. And when you have people who feel that they're in a position where they're making the laws and they're making the loopholes in the laws and they had to bat for their friends and they had to protect their friends, all kind of craziness could be happening here. All kinds of craziness. So there's another, I want to end with this particular issue. The Prime Minister in 2022 will have a lot of bullets to face. He faced a lot of bullets in 2021. 2021 would have been a very difficult year. There are a lot of things, a lot of times he had to come and take off his belt. There would have been a lot of challenges that he would have had to face. And I feel given the team of persons that he has around him right now, there are very many challenges that he's going to be facing in 2022. So I feel like there are a lot of hard choices that have to come, not just the vaccine mandate, a lot of other very hard choices that have to come to make it so that plenty of them hits that the Prime Minister had to take in 2021 doesn't continue in 2022. Because if the numbers, if our infection rate continues to go up in the same way, and if the infection rate continues to impact on our public sector and the workforce in the same way, and if the media and opposition continue to function and spread this cult of death, this culture of death in the same way, I rather suspect that it is going to be a massive uphill climb for this government to continue to do the things that it needs to do to protect the citizenry, to get us into a position where we can come out of this pandemic on the other side stronger. So I feel that the team that the Prime Minister had in 2021 can't necessarily be the team that continues in 2022 for a number of reasons. The boat cruise on the weekend is just one of the reasons. But I feel there has to be a significant, I feel there has to be some significant changes. And folks, that's where I'm going to wrap it up. That's what I wanted to talk to you all about. That's the review of the things from 2021 that is going to be impacting on us in 2022. I will be going on a little bit of a break again, and I will then return in the middle of January, and we will take things up from there. I want to try and do some different things this year. I don't want to just be focusing on the politics and current affairs. Earlier on, I would have talked to you all about the need to tune out the noise. So I want, from time to time, we're going to have conversations here, not just with myself, with other people, to talk about how to tune out the noise and how to, focus on things that are more positive, so that we're not always feeling anxious and angry and discontented all the time. I also want to talk about business. I want to talk about food, how we eating, how we're going to be dealing up with all of the increased food prices. So there are a number of things that I want us to deal up with that will be on the more positive side. I can't be talking about media and thing all the time. So I also can't be talking about, these idiots in government that, can't seem to get the act together. So, and I mean everybody are idiots, but you all know who it is I'm talking about. So that's me wrapping up 2021 and looking at how 2022 is likely to shape itself up, right? So I will see you all in 2 weeks' time.